Welcome to this next video in the series of Introduction to Music Fundamentals. In this video, we're going to look at tones and semitones. Let's start with semitones. The musical distance in pitch between each of the 12 notes in an octave is equal. You'll remember that in previous videos, we've looked at the distance of an octave between, for example, C and its higher equivalent C. And we worked out that there were 12 white and black notes between those two Cs. Now, the premise on which music works is that each of those notes is equal in distance from each other. So the 12 notes in between an octave are exactly equal. So if you go from C to C sharp, it would be the same amount of distance as if we were going from F to F sharp. That very small distance between two notes is called a semitone. The distance between one note and its nearest neighboring note, this is when I'm talking about a piano keyboard, and if you look at the slide at the moment, you'll see that there is a piano keyboard, and you'll see that there's a little arrow going from the note C up to the black note C sharp. That distance from C to C sharp is what we call a semitone. It's the very, very smallest amount of distance that a note can travel in the Western musical notation system. Now, it's helpful for us to use this here in Africa because many African scales can work with this 12 semitone system. Some don't, but many do. If we were to go to India or to China, for example, where they use smaller distances called quarter tones or microtones, then the piano keyboard doesn't work because it doesn't have small enough notes in between. But for our purposes in studying Western music and quite a lot of local South African music, the system works well. The important thing to know is that a semitone on the piano, at least, is usually from a white note going to its nearest black note, except between the notes E and F. That's where there is no black note in between. A semitone would simply be going from E straight to F, and also between B and C. There's also no black note in between that. So B going to C is also a semitone. If you look at the slide, I've written down that semitone so that you can see what it looks like. Middle C going up to the black note C sharp. Of course, you'll remember that the enharmonic note for C sharp is D flat. So we could have written C going to D flat. That is also a semitone. Now, a tone is slightly bigger than a semitone. It's actually equal to 2 semitones. So a distance of 2 semitones is called a tone. And for example, now if you look on the slide again, you'll see that I've drawn an arrow from the note C to the note D. In this case, we've gone 2 steps. We've gone from the C up to the C sharp, the black note, and then down back to the white note, which is D. That, where you have 2 semitones, is called a tone. That's a very important concept for us, or these two, semitone and tone, are very important concepts for us because they underpin all of the music that we will be working on, particularly in the second semester. On the slide, you'll also see that I have written out on the treble clef the 2 notes a tone apart, C going to D. You'll notice there's no accidental in front of the D because it's just going from one white note through to the next white note. So let's just revise that quickly. A semitone is when you go from one note, one step up or one step down to its closest note. If we were on C, its closest note is C sharp. If we were on the note E, its closest note would be F. Any of the notes where you are, if you go up or down to its closest note, that would be a semitone. But a tone is where we skip one of the semitones and go to the next note. So if we were starting on C, we'd go up to C sharp and down another step to D. That would be a tone, C to D. If we were starting on the note E and we wanted to go up a whole tone, we'd go E to F sharp, because we'd have to skip the F and step one more up to F sharp. So a whole tone from E would be F sharp. Now, so tones and semitones have a very distinct sound. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is to sing these examples along with me so that you get an idea of what these sound like. They are the principles underpinning all of music. I've got two examples on the slides which I'd like you to look at now. The first is a series of tones. C going to D, going to E, going to F sharp, and then coming back down. Those are 4 tones in a row. This is what they would sound like if we sang them. C, D, E, F sharp, E, D, C. See if you can sing it with me. C, D, E, F sharp, E, D, C. Those are all tones coming after each other. Now listen to the difference when I sing 4 semitones in a row. It's much more difficult to sing semitones because they're so very close to each other. Let me sing it first, and then the second time I'll invite you to sing it with me. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, D natural, C sharp, C natural. Try singing it with me. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, D natural, C sharp, C natural. You can hear then that the tones are a bit bigger while the semitones are much smaller. One thing which I would like to point out to you on the slide, which is very important concerning accidentals. In one of the videos that we have already done, we learned about how to use accidentals, and you'll remember that the accidental has to come before the note, not after it. But we also learned about something called a natural. If you look at the second example with the semitones, it goes C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and then happens one of those accidentals called a natural. You'll see that that little boxed shape that looks a bit like a sharp but without 2 of its stems is in front of the D. That means that you mustn't do D sharp, but you must rather sing or play D natural, just D on its own. You'll also remember that one of the rules that we learned is if there is an accidental in front of a note, it holds all the way through for all of those notes until there is a bar line. So if we look at the slide, you'll see there is no bar line in the second example, and the second note is C sharp. That means when we get to the C 4 notes later, it also is a C sharp. It's not a C natural. It remains C sharp. But if we want a C natural, as we do in the next note, you have to indicate that using the natural sign. All right, so now you have an idea what tones and semitones sound like. Now, let's have a look at some examples that you may encounter in an exam or a test. Here is one that we'll look at straight away. Write a note 1 semitone higher than the note provided. Use the same note value as the given note. So there you have a note in the bass clef. Step 1 is to identify the given note. And if you remember your rhymes for the bass clef, good boys deserve food always. So the second line, good boys. It is a B. Okay, so we're dealing with the note B. The second step is to draw a piano keyboard so that you can locate that pitch or that note on the keyboard. So I've on the slide you'll see I've put a piano keyboard and I've put an arrow pointing towards the note B so that you can see where it is. It's very important that you locate the note on the piano keyboard, because then we can easily find which way a semitone goes and which is the next note away from a semitone. So I'll show you, for example, step 3, the question asks us for a semitone higher or upwards. So if we look at the piano keyboard, B, the next step higher, one semitone higher, is a C. If you have a look where the arrow is and you go to the next available note, the next closest note up from B is C. So we know that the right note or the right answer for this is the note C. But the last step is that the question requires that you use the same note value as the given note. And the given note was a quaver. So we have to write a C, which is a quaver. If you look at the slide now, you'll see the correct answer at the bottom. The first note, which was the note that was given to us, is a B. The second note, a semitone higher, is a C, and it's also a quaver. Now let's look at a very similar example. This one says, write a note a semitone lower. In the last question, it was the semitone higher. Write a note a semitone lower than the note provided. Use the same note value as the given note. So steps 1 and 2 would be exactly the same as in our previous question, because it's exactly the same note. We are working with a B again. So we've got a B and we would locate it on the piano keyboard. So let's go back and look at the piano keyboard. There it is. There is the B. Now we have to find a semitone one step lower than the B, which is the closest note to B. It is the black note right next to B on the left-hand side of it, which is either A sharp or B flat. It can have an enharmonic name, all right? So we're looking at either B flat or A sharp. So our answer is going to look like this. There are two options because of that enharmonic name for the note. Step 4, you can see that the correct answer is B followed by B flat. That's a semitone lower. B flat is a semitone lower. Or B followed by A sharp. The A sharp and the B flat are exactly the same note, so it doesn't matter in this case which one you choose to use. Either would be correct. So we've looked now at semitones going up and semitones going down. You use the same steps, the same 4 steps in both cases. But what happens when you are going to have to work with a note that is a tone away? Let's have a look at this example. Write a note a tone higher than the note provided. Use the same note value as the given note. So step 1 is to identify the given note, just as it was in our previous examples. Now we are in the treble clef. If you remember your rhymes, every good boy deserves food. So every good, the note is on the second line, it's a G, and it has a sharp in front of it. So it is G sharp. Our second step is to draw a piano keyboard and then identify where G sharp is. In this case, you look for the white note G and you go to the black note directly to the right of it. Do you see where the arrow is pointing? You'll see that is the note in G sharp. It's in the series of 3 black notes, it's the note in the middle of those 3 black notes. That is G sharp. So that's step 2. We've located it on the piano keyboard. Now, step 3, when we are working with tones, is a little bit more complicated than it was with semitones. And I'm going to describe that to you very carefully if I can now. The question asks for a tone higher. Now we are not counting up one step, but we are counting up 2 steps. So let's go back to that keyboard and have a look at the slide now. We find we're on the middle black note of the series of 3 notes. One step up would go to the white note A. Another step up would go to A sharp, the black note right next to it. So a whole tone higher is A sharp. But you'll remember about black notes that they can have 2 names, enharmonic names. So A sharp is exactly the same as B flat, isn't it? Okay. Now, and this is a very, very important thing for you to remember. When you are working with tones, you must use the letter name immediately after or before the given note. So in this case, the given note was G sharp. All right. We're going up. So the next letter name up from G is A. So the answer must be A sharp, not B flat, because G going to B flat or G sharp going to B flat is 2 letter names away. We only want it to be 1 letter name away. So the correct answer, and the only correct answer for this question, is A sharp. Also remember that step 4 is making sure that you are using the correct time value. The original note was a minim, so our answer also has to be a minim. There you can see the answer, G sharp going to A sharp. Let's do another example like this, just so that you are sure that you understand this principle of going 1 step away. Here we have, write a note a tone lower than the note provided, but use the same note value as the given note. So here we have exactly the same example, but just going down instead of up. We've already worked out what the note is. It's a G sharp. Let's go back to our piano keyboard so that you can see where it is. It's the middle note of the group of 3 black notes. But this time, instead of going up, we are going down. So from G sharp, the closest note down is the note G, the white note G. And then we have to make another step down, and the closest note there is the black note F sharp. Now, F sharp can have enharmonic equivalents. It can be F sharp or G flat. What is our rule? When working with tones, the answer must be 1 letter name away. So, 1 letter name away from G sharp is F. F is the next closest letter name. So the answer must be F sharp. And step 4 is the same as before. We need to make sure that because the first note was a minim, the second note must also be a minim. The answer is a minim F sharp. This is a very important rule to remember, and I'm just going to reiterate it again. When you are working with semitones, you can use enharmonic equivalents, and that will be fine. If you remember our first example we had, or the second example rather, we had the answer semitone down from B was B flat or A sharp. Either of those would have been correct because we were working with semitones. But with tones, you can only use the next letter name which is in that sequence. So if you are going up, it needs to be the next letter up. If you are going down, it needs to be the next letter down. So for example, if the note is an E and you're asked to write a tone up, it would need to be an F sharp, not a G flat. If you are going down from the E, it would need to be a D, because that's the next note before E. So those are the 2 important things that you need to remember when you are working with tones and semitones. And that's where we end this lesson.